There's a saying, I say it a lot on this program. Anecdote is not data. You often encounter situations where I talk about situations on the radio, and I will say a majority, let's just say, put it to you this way. I am aware of private polling that senior Republicans have and senior Democrats have, separate polling, that shows a majority of Americans want to get to the bottom of what actually happened on January 6th. You may not, but a majority of Americans do. The Republicans have the polling, the Democrats have the polling. Democrats have misread this polling. They think that it'll be a way to hurt Republicans in 2022 by tying it to Trump. That's not what the polling suggests at all. It's just Americans do want some answers about what happened. But. I will get people who will call the program and say, well, I don't care about it. I don't know who these people are, but me and my friends, we don't care about it. Anecdote is not data. You may not care about it, but people do. Let's take the McRib. I actually like the McRib. When the McRib rolls around, I go get one. And a majority of my friends are horrified. They don't like the McRib. No, none of them eat the McRib. Well, that's anecdote. The data shows McDonald's brings it back every year because it does generate sales. People do like it and eat it, and it generates enough to churn a profit for them. The data is the McRib makes money for McDonald's, even though the anecdotes around me, or if I lived or in my sphere of people that I typically hang out with, I think I'm the only one who'll go order a McRib. But my anecdote is not the data. Now, if you get enough anecdotes over time, and those anecdotes are randomly generated and entirely consistent, you know what they become? Data points. An anecdote is not data, but lots and lots and lots and lots of duplicated anecdotes over time, or anecdotes that go in different directions, what have you, over time, they become points of data. And then that data then points to a truth. Before we get to the truth sometimes, we can look at the data and we can form hypotheses. And then eventually we get to test those hypotheses or those theories. Right now, one of those is, does education matter? Are education issues really an issue that's going to fire up the American public? You know, the hypothesis from Republicans looking at the data out there is that, yes, this is an issue that will galvanize voters, independent voters, in the Republicans' favor. The Democrats' theory is that only Republicans care about this issue. The Democrats have a Fox News poll that shows a majority of independents and Democrats don't really care about the issue, and a majority of Republicans do. Republicans have their own polling that shows a majority of independents and Republicans, and a large minority of Democrats do. And there are anecdotes around the country. Here in Georgia, over in Texas, up in Virginia, it's been liberal parents who've showed up. Not just conservative parents, not just Christians. It's been liberal parents who have showed up at schools to complain about critical race theory. It's been liberal parents who have complained about mask mandates for elementary school. It's been liberal parents who have complained about school shutdowns. And Democrats, based on the data, they look at this and say, well, these are anecdotes. Yes, it's true. Democrats may have shown up in these places. They may have opposed it, but they're the minority. Overwhelmingly, Democrats don't care about this. Overwhelmingly, progressives and liberals don't care about this. It's the Christian conservative fringe. They're the ones who care about it. You're always going to get a few people to show up. They think it's anecdote. Republicans, though, think it's data. So both sides are shaping their hypotheses. The Republicans believe education is an issue that's going to work to their favor. The Democrats believe it's a non-issue. We're going to have a real-world test. It's called the gubernatorial election in Virginia. And the data is beginning to suggest that the truth is education is going to help the GOP. How do I know this? Well, yesterday in Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, the former governor of Virginia, who wants to be governor again, sat down for an interview with a news station in Virginia. Each of the candidates, Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe, were given 20 minutes to sit down and conduct interviews. And Terry McAuliffe cut short the interview with the news station.
Virginia, he says election integrity is the number one issue. No, it isn't. Healthcare, COVID, education, job.
And finally.
Okay. All right, we're over. That's it. Hey, I gave you extra time. Come on, man. You should have asked better questions early on. You should have asked questions your viewers care about.
Well, we did.
Well, we did, you see. We should have asked questions your viewers cared about. Well, we did. Yeah, it didn't go over well there with Terry McAuliffe getting up and walking off. And now the reporter has come out and said that they asked both sides to do the interview, and they were given 20 minutes apiece, and Terry McAuliffe stormed off the stage and didn't want to continue answering the questions. Here's the reporter from the news station talking about this.
So if you watch those entire interviews on our website, we do want to point out that the Terry McAuliffe interview is shorter than our interview with Glenn Youngkin. That was not by our doing. Nick offered both candidates 20 minutes exactly to be fair for the interviews. McAuliffe abruptly ended 7 News' interview after just 10 minutes and told Nick that he should have asked better questions and that Nick should have asked questions 7 News viewers care about. That's what he said. So,
yeah, doesn't look good for Terry McAuliffe. See, let me explain to you one of the downsides of authoritarian regimes. Oh, yeah, we're going there, folks. Authoritarian regimes have a distinct characteristic over time. As a climate of fear pops up, everyone becomes a yes man. Everyone becomes a yes man. The people who would challenge, the people who would dissent, the people who would question, they either fall by the wayside or they're killed or exiled. They're silenced. Because the leader wants what the leader wants, and the leader gets to the point where the leader believes what he thinks is right because everyone around him tells him all the time he's grand and glorious. To the extent that the Democrats say Donald Trump was an authoritarian, Donald Trump did have a trait when he was president towards the end, not the beginning, but towards the end, where he was surrounded with people who told him everything he believed was true, and very few people challenged him. The people who tried to challenge him were by other people sidelined, so they couldn't be there to challenge because those people wanted to be in the glory of the God King Trump. I say that sarcastically, not pejoratively against the president. It's these people treated him as if he was some sort of king and they needed to be in his presence. They wanted his affection, and so they agreed with him because by agreeing with him, there was no argument or controversy. So the people who could steer the president in other directions were shown the door. At least with Donald Trump, he maintained good relationships with those people, and they went on to do other things. With the Democrats, look at David Shore. David Shore is the Democratic pollster who in 2020 said, hey, guys, this rioting in the streets is going to hurt the Democrats, the George Floyd riots, and the Democrats exiled him, silenced him, canceled him. Now, he landed on his feet, but he's the exception to the rule. See, it's interesting. The Democrats always said that Donald Trump was authoritarian, and then they themselves cancel anyone who dissents from what their views are. And they pushed David Shore out of his data analytics polling firm. He landed on his feet somewhere else. He doesn't like to give up the name of his new company because he doesn't want them coming after him now. You know, in real authoritarian regimes, in the Soviet Union, China, North Korea, they just disappeared you. You weren't fired. You weren't silenced. You were killed. The Soviets became notorious about this. If you ever watched the Chernobyl series on HBO, it's a really well done, fact-based series. The Soviet bureaucracy was designed to tell Mikhail Gorbachev exactly what he wanted to hear. There was no dispute, no dissension. And Gorbachev caught on over time that I'm surrounded by people who are yes men who wish to tell me exactly what I want to hear, and I need other people who are going to tell me the truth. Well, the Democrats, they've purged anyone who could tell them the truth. So, I mean, go back to David Shore in 2020. He was saying the riots and defund the police, bad. And the Democrats said, okay, there's no one here to tell me otherwise. And all my progressive pollsters are telling me everybody wants to defund the police. So they push it. You notice how the Democrats said, no one's talking about defunding the police. No one ever said defund the police. That's not a thing Democrats believe. Oh, it was enough. It was said enough by enough prominent Democrats and then implemented around the country. Austin, Texas, defunded the police. Atlanta, Georgia, defunding the police. Minneapolis, Minnesota, defunding the police. Seattle and Portland, defunding the police. Washington, D.C., defunding the police. Reprioritizing funds. They say, we're not defunding, we're just reprioritizing. And, of course, the media fact checkers, who are a bunch of progressives, fact check false. They're not defunding. They're just moving the money out of police to other things. And there was a voter backlash in November of 2020. Democrats almost lost their House majority when they were expected to expand their seats. Republicans held all their governor's mansions, expanded their state legislative footprint across the country. The Republicans actually had a really good night in November, all because voters didn't like the defund message. So now here come the Democrats, headed into 2022. The anecdotes, they still say, are just anecdotes. But in Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, after 3 weeks of doubling down on teachers shouldn't be able to have a say in what their children are taught, and critical race theory is a racist dog whistle, is suddenly running as fast as he can from say, they took me out of context. I believe parents should have a say in education, except now Terry McAuliffe has been asked, what about the parents and the Department of Justice? The Department of Justice wants to treat parents as terrorists.
I want to get your thought on something that's also getting a lot of attention in Northern Virginia. We've seen over the recent months a flurry of activity at a lot of our school boards in Loudoun County, Fairfax County, and others. And the U.S. Attorney General came out with a memorandum on October 4th directing the FBI, U.S. attorneys to work with federal and state leaders to get involved with disputes between parents as well as school boards and school staff. Do you agree with
Now, what he's saying there, I realize that audio is very low from the reporter because they had Terry McAuliffe mic'd, not himself. He's asking, what about the Department of Justice? They're going after these parents. They're saying the parents showing up are being disruptive. The parents who are going to school boards, that it's domestic terrorism.
with President Joe Biden's U.S. Attorney General on this and what he's trying to accomplish?
I'll leave the Attorney General of the United States to make their decisions. I have no knowledge of it. They're going to make their own decisions.
So he lays out the case for McAuliffe. And I realize, I apologize. The reporter audio was very low there. The reporter makes the case. Here's what the Biden administration is saying. They want to go after these reporters. They want to go after parents. They believe parents are being disruptive. Parents are being a disruptive force in education. This is after McAuliffe says Youngkin took him out of context. And I'm gonna let the Department of Justice do what they want. I'll let the Attorney General do what he wants. McAuliffe is surrounded by people who tell him these are anecdotes, that Democrats actually don't care about the issue, that it's just Republicans. And so he's governed himself accordingly. And only at the end have people come in and say, wait a second, buddy, our polling suggests otherwise. And now he's in a mass panic mode. The hypothesis is about to be tested in Virginia. Is it anecdote or is it data that parents are really hacked off about what's happening in schools? I'm willing to say, given the last-minute scrambling and panic by the McAuliffe campaign, their data is showing them it's not anecdote, that it's data. And we will find the truth in just a few weeks in Virginia. If it's close or McAuliffe loses, we will know education and defund the police are still two big issues for the GOP. And you will see the media and the Democrats scramble and say, nobody believes this. Nobody wants to defund the police. No one's teaching critical race theory. It's a racist dog whistle. It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. They banked on the fact that no one cared about this because they purged from the Democratic Party anyone of reasonable sense who could tell them this is an issue. All the data shows them it's an issue. And they say, that's not data, that's anecdote. And now there's going to be hell to pay for the Democrats because of it. And it's going to set up 2022, and we know what we're going to be talking about for the next year.